October 13th, 1972. A Uruguayan rugby team boards a flight. The pilot announces over the speaker, "We need to pass through some air turbulence. It's normal, don't worry." The plane had taken off from Montevideo, the capital of Uruguay, and was headed to Santiago, the capital of Chile. Roberto Canessa, the team's doctor, asked one of the boys, "Why is the plane flying so close to the mountains?" Seconds after this question, the plane gets so close to the mountain that one wing hits the slope and tears off. The aircraft crashes on the same mountainside. Roberto Canessa, the same team doctor who later wrote a book about this event, says, "After we hit the ground, my head slammed hard against the seat in front. I was completely dazed and didn't understand what had happened." In his writings, he mentioned, "I thought I had died." The other passengers were screaming and shouting so much that Roberto gradually regained consciousness and realized the scale of the disaster. He saw one of the boys bleeding from his eyes. Others had broken bodies, and everyone was moaning in pain. You know the Andes mountain range, the longest mountain range in the world, forming Chile's border? The plane had crashed right there, in a snow-covered area with heavy snowfall. The passengers, all injured and shattered, smelled aviation fuel and said, "Let's get out, there's a high risk of fire." They stepped out into the snow. They built a large cross, hoping rescuers would spot them. They also carved a giant SOS in the snow. You know SOS means help. But heavy snowfall kept covering it up. Days passed, and they endured unimaginable hardships. During these 2 days, 2 planes flew overhead, but didn't see them. The plane had 45 passengers. 12 died instantly. 5 more died hours later due to bleeding. 28 remained alive. No one found them. 2 weeks passed. Then, on the 17th day, as they were on the mountainside, a mountain covered in millions of tons of snow, a massive avalanche triggered and rushed toward the plane. It hit the wreckage and swept away 9 of them. They had eaten whatever food was available on the plane, and now only a small amount remained. The plane had crashed at an altitude of 3,600 meters, a bitterly cold place. Until that day, food wasn't the main issue, but the cold was killing them slowly. They had no water problem because they ate snow, but food was running out. The cold was unbearable. So they tore pieces from the plane's fuselage and built a shelter to protect themselves from the freezing wind. The snow's glare was blinding their eyes, so they ripped leather from the seats and made blindfolds. They broke off metal pieces from the plane, and those with broken limbs used them as splints to keep bones aligned, hoping they would heal and not worsen. Roberto Canessa, the doctor, tried his best to help everyone. He even buried the bodies of those killed by the avalanche under the snow to preserve them until rescue came. Roberto wrote in his book, "I was traveling with intelligent young men, and their intelligence heightened because they wanted to survive." 17 days had passed since the crash. Food was completely gone. The altitude was so high that not even an animal could be found to hunt and eat. They all knew there was meat under the snow, the bodies. They endured hunger for a while, but finally, they chose a solution we all know. Most passengers were devout Christians and considered this act terribly wrong. But as the old saying goes, hunger knows no religion or faith. Roberto Canessa, as a doctor, knew the human body well. He felt it was his duty to guide everyone on which parts of the bodies were nutritious to eat. Roberto said, It was very difficult because we knew all these bodies. We had been friends with them for years. Now we had to eat their remains. Everyone decided to consume the bodies, but there were 3 children's bodies on the plane. They said, "No, we won't touch these." They were the children of players and team members. Roberto was a strong person and transferred that strength to others. He kept their spirits up, saying, "Eat, don't be upset. If I were dead and my friends were hungry, I would tell them to eat my body." Those who survived said, "If it weren't for Roberto, we would have all died in the first few days. He gave us morale, comfort, and medical help." Throughout this time, they had the plane's radio and tried to connect with someone. But a month passed. Every message they sent received no reply. They finally realized that no one was coming to save them. They decided to take action themselves. 3 of them made snowshoes from plane materials and wore them to climb higher and see where they were. When they reached the top, they were horrified. They saw mountains in every direction, as far as the eye could see. They said, "Well, we'll start walking downhill." 2 began descending. For 10 days, they walked downhill until they reached a place with less snow and some greenery, almost a meadow, with a flowing spring. Seeing the spring and green grass lifted their spirits, and they continued. They walked another 70 kilometers on foot until they finally reached something, a village. They entered the village and told the villagers, "We need to contact the city." Finally, they made contact and informed the government of their survival and location. In short, after 70 days since the crash, the Chilean government sent 2 helicopters and found them. 16 people survived. In total, 29 had died. News agencies and newspapers were relentless toward the survivors. They were so harshly judged that the survivors felt ashamed to admit they were among the passengers. Everywhere, people said, "The cannibals have come." The Chilean government rescued the cannibals. For devout Christians, this was a terrible stigma because they believed those who eat human flesh must be killed. Eventually, they returned to Uruguay, and the church there forgave them. After much forgiveness, at least in Uruguay, they were less harassed, and people no longer called them devils. Even the families of those whose bodies were eaten forgave them and understood that they were not to blame. However, Christianity as a whole did not forgive them. Even if the Uruguayan church forgave them, it only applied in Uruguay, not elsewhere. For this reason, some radical church members put them on a plane, flew them back to the same mountains, and crashed the plane into the slope, saying, "Now let's see what you do." Don't take this last part too seriously. It's a dark joke.